Hello and welcome to the Windows 8 launch training for partners. My name is Jeremy Black and I'll be guiding you through this training today. To let you know a little bit more about me, I work at Microsoft in the Consumer Windows Support Organization. My primary role is to create training for people supporting Windows. Me and my team, we create training for agents supporting Windows at the consumer level here at Microsoft, as well as for our partners who are working with or supporting Windows in some way. The primary audience for this training was authored for is Windows support agents who have existing experience supporting Windows in some way, such as they previously were supporting Windows 7 or Windows XP or something along those lines. This recorded delivery is a companion to the Windows 8 training, which should be available from the same location you obtain these videos. The module that we're looking at now is the Windows 8 Overview module. The purpose of this module is to introduce you to the Windows 8 training and cover some of the key points related to Windows 8 that you should be aware of before we go on. The slides that we're looking at now are really just a part of the overall training and are intended as an aid to trainers that are delivering this course to a classroom. The core content for this training would really be the web interface that I'm bringing on the screen now. All of the materials, all of the individual modules were brought together into this web interface that you could see here in the list on the left. You'll see, like, for example, we're on Windows 8 Overview right now, and there's a long list of modules below that, and each one of these are the individual modules that make up this training. Each one of these modules will have a companion paper assessment and slides available, and we'll also have a section on each one of these modules in the instructor guide as well that provides some additional information that's useful if you're going to be delivering this class to others. Each of the modules that we're going to be looking at is going to have their own separate video. So, for example, this overview module will be the first video, and then once we get into setup, that will be the second video. Okay. So the first section that we'll get into of the overview module is the introduction part of that. What is intended to happen is that we have a conversation as a classroom to talk through what your experience with Windows 8 has already been up to this point. Have you installed the developer preview? Have you installed the consumer preview or the release preview? What did you think about it? What was your experience with it? Did you have any problems installing Windows 8 on existing Windows 7 hardware? Did you try installing Windows 8 on older hardware, maybe that originally came with Windows Vista or Windows XP? What were your experiences like that with that? If you do redeliver this material in a classroom, that would definitely be a good conversation to have. The beginning of this conversation should really start off by opening up the Windows 8 product guide, though. The Windows 8 product guide is a resource that Microsoft makes available. We made it available for Windows 7, and now we're making it available for Windows 8. There was already a version available on the release preview page. You'll notice if we go to, looks like it's windows.microsoft.com, ENUS Windows-8 release-preview. If you go to this link, it will take you to a page which gives information about the release preview, and down here under More to Explore, you're going to see this link that says Product Guide. Just click through on the PDF, and I believe that the version that it's linking to at this point is the final version. But if you are not super familiar with Windows 8 in general, then this is probably going to be a good start for you. This is probably going to be the best way to really get ramped up from maybe the basics perspective, like learn some of the core concepts about the new UI and what's really new and exciting from a more marketing perspective for this release. If you're in a role where you speak with customers, where you're selling them on Windows 8, or you're trying to explain to them how a certain feature for Windows 8 is going to provide them with an overall better experience than what they would have had in Windows Vista or Windows 7, then a lot of those conversations can be, well, the information that you could that you would want to have as a resource in those conversations, like ideas about scenarios and ideas about what's really interesting and new from a consumer's perspective in Windows 8. A lot of that is going to come from the product guide, so I really recommend that you take a look through that, and really before you even go much further in through these videos as well, if you're not familiar with Windows 8 to begin with, and that's definitely a good starting point. Now the next section that we're going to be going through is talking through the different editions that are available for Windows 8. Get that out of the way. So the first thing that you're going to notice in this list of all the editions related to Windows 8 is that the list is overall much shorter than what we had seen with previous Windows versions. As far as what a consumer is going to see whenever they're going to the store and looking for Windows 8 in the store, like boxed copies, that sort of thing, they're only going to see two. They're going to see Windows 8 and they're going to see Windows 8 Pro. This means there's no more Home Basic, Home Premium, Ultimate. All of that is gone, and the overall set of options that the customer needs to choose from is going to be a much simpler choice. It's much shorter list. So the first one, just Windows 8, is well, you can consider this to be the mainstream consumer version of Windows 8. It's going to provide all the main benefits of Windows 8 that we'll discuss above, that were covered in the product guide. But for the majority of people in a home scenario, this is going to be all that they need. Now we have another edition above that called Windows 8 Pro, which is going to be the version that you want if you're buying a PC to use in a work environment. This is going to give you access to things like BitLocker encryption, Hyper-V if you want to be able to run VMs on your PC, the ability to join the domain if you want to. If you're working in a corporate environment that you need to be able to join to the domain to access resources and apply policy and that sort of thing, then you're going to need Windows 8 Pro. Now, there's an edition that we don't list here, mainly because it's one of those things that's out of scope for this training. Because this training is intended for consumer support, anything related to joining a domain or management or deployment or anything that is more of a business-focused feature is not going to be covered in depth here. It's considered to be out of scope for this training. So because of that, you're not seeing the third edition that users, well, they won't see it in the store, but if you have a volume license agreement, then you'll be able to get Windows 8 Enterprise, and that's specifically for large corporations with the volume license that have agreements with Microsoft, and they deploy those PCs en masse versus a home user that would just purchase a new Windows 8 PC for or install Windows 8 on an existing Windows 7 PC. So the way that we're going to be talking through that is a little bit different between each of them. But anyway, the important point of all of that is that we're not going to be talking about Enterprise, but it is still available. Enterprise is going to be the third invisible SKU from the perspective of this training. Now, well, I won't jump ahead just yet. We'll just leave it at that. The next new release that we're going to be coming out with at the same time as Windows 8 is Windows RT. Windows RT is a version of Windows that is built for the ARM processor architecture versus Windows 8 or Windows 7, or most Windows versions up to this point have been developed for an x86 version of the processor architecture. So you're talking about it Intel, like their Core series. You're talking about AMD, but nothing like ARM up to this point. So ARM is the processor architecture that is in use today in things like smartphones or tablets that are out on the market. this is a big new change for Windows in general, and it's it's important to call out whenever we're talking about what Windows RT is that Windows RT is not just another edition of Windows 8. You'll notice that it's not Windows 8 RT or anything related to Windows 8 in the name. It's a separate family of Windows. You can think of Windows RT as being along the lines of Windows Embedded or Windows Phone or something like that. A whole other family of Windows beyond just the more traditional Windows. One of the other differences that Windows RT is going to have in comparison to Windows 8 is the fact that Windows RT is going to include Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote. These are touch-optimized versions of desktop software, so unlike the majority of the other softwares that customers are going to be running on Windows RT PCs, the Office that is included with it is going to be desktop software only. And we'll get into what it means to be desktop software versus software in the new model once we get into the Windows Store Apps module later on in the training. One question that frequently follows a discussion of a new Windows version is, what are the paths to upgrade? This table shows the different upgrade paths, and you're going to see that where you can go is dependent, and how you get there is dependent on where you're coming from. So in addition to upgrade paths, Windows 8 provides some migration options during installation. This helps make it easier to get Windows 8 installed and retain your user accounts, files, and configuration options, even when your current Windows version does not have a direct upgrade path to your desired Windows 8 edition. The table that we're looking at has 3 different values. Yes indicates that we're capable of doing a full upgrade. This is the traditional upgrade that you're used to. If you're talking about upgrading from XP to Vista or from Vista to Windows 7, that model of upgrade is still supported, but it's not the only model available for Windows 8. An additional model that is new for Windows 8 is this migration. This is different from an upgrade. Instead of bringing forward everything with the migration, we're only bringing forward your files, settings, user accounts, that sort of thing. But the apps that were installed on the older version of Windows that you're upgrading from, those don't get pulled forward. So any of the application settings that we did pull forward, they're going to be in place whenever you reinstall those apps, so that whenever you reinstall those apps, in most cases, the fact that the settings are already there, those settings will continue to apply to the newly installed app on this new PC or in this new installation of Windows. Now you'll notice that for operating systems like Windows 7 Professional or Ultimate, that you can only migrate to Windows 8, but you can do a full upgrade to Windows 8 Pro. And the reason for that is there's features that Pro and Ultimate have in Windows 7 that would be lost in Windows 8, specifically the ability to join a domain. So this would create a bad scenario for our customers if we had Windows 7 Professional and Ultimate PCs that were joined to the domain, and then they attempted to do a full upgrade to Windows 8 and then lost the ability to be joined to a domain. That would create a weird state for the customer, so we don't allow for that. You can go to Windows 8, but it needs to be a migration-based install. Now, you'll notice that there's a third option here, which is for FP. What FP in this case means is feature pack. In Windows 7, you can move between different editions with this feature called Windows Anytime Upgrade. So using that, you could go from Home Basic to Home Premium or Home Premium to Pro without having to reinstall Windows. It just applied the new features that were different from the lower edition that you were coming from. Windows Anytime Upgrade is still available in Windows 8, but it's been renamed. It's now being referred to as Add Features to Windows 8. And that is what we're talking about whenever we mention FP or feature pack here. In the case of Windows 8, though, the feature pack, what it what most customers will do is whenever they have either Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro, if they're just trying to get Media Center, is that they can install this feature pack that will take them from either Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro all the way up to Windows 8 Pro with Media Center. The feature pack that they install on either edition will have the same end result, which is that they'll be left with Windows 8 Pro with Media Center. These next series of slides are going to be comparing the different features that are available in each edition of Windows 8 as well as with Windows RT. Each of these slides contains a table, but I think there's actually a better view of this content in the web version of the training. So if you're curious and want to see a more full version of that table, then I think you should probably take a look at the features section in the Introduction to Windows 8 lesson in the Windows 8 Overview module. So what we could see on this page is just a list of all the features that are differentiated or really new in some way for Windows 8. So for a lot of these, it's really listed just to show that, like for Start Screen and the Windows Store, these and the new apps, these are supported across all versions of Windows 8 as well as with Windows RT. So really this is just listed to show that there is no difference between Windows 8 and Windows RT in this regard. I think you'll probably find that that's the case for Windows RT in general. The features that you see, the experience that you see when you're using Windows RT is going to be nearly identical to Windows 8. The features, the interfaces, the places that you can navigate to within the operating system are going to look nearly identical between Windows RT and Windows 8. Now, as we go down this list, you're going to see a few items that are, I think, worth calling out. Like, for example, Office. Office is included in the third column, which is for Windows RT, so it has the X there, but Office is not included with Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro. Same for this down here, installation of x86 64 and desktop software. So the ability to install additional desktop software is only available if you have a version of Windows 8, but Windows RT, that's not something that it supports. Windows RT is not going to provide for the ability to install like arbitrary executables, binaries that you've downloaded from the internet onto the desktop. The only way to get new software onto a Windows RT device will be through the Windows Store. And then as we scroll down, you see, like, for example, storage spaces and media player. Both of these are examples of features that are not included with Windows RT. And then near the bottom, you see a list of features that are specific to Windows 8 Pro. And as you can see from the types of features that are being listed, these are more business-oriented features. So you're talking about BitLocker, boot from VHD, Hyper-V, domain join, EFS, group policy, and the ability to host a remote desktop session. These are all things that are only available in Windows 8 Pro. Okay. So as you can see, there's several slides that cover the same table that is in the web version of the training. The next section that we're talking through are the different removed features that, so these are features that were part of Windows 7 but have been removed from Windows 8 for this release. So I'll just go through this list real quick. I'm not going to read you all of the details, but I just want you to be aware of some of the more key points. Things like the Start menu and the Start button, those are gone. Those have been replaced by the new full screen Start screen that we're going to be talking more about here in a little later. Downloadable support for HLP files. HLP is a older legacy style of help file that was used in the Windows 2000, Windows XP timeframe. So it's usually very old legacy programs that are using that HLP help file format. We did not support HLP in the box in Windows 7, but we did provide an additional downloadable component that would enable Windows 7 to support HLP files. Now the change for Windows 8 is that we're not providing that downloadable component. HLP is considered to be legacy, and we're dropping support for it completely at this point. Next is Windows DVD Maker and DVD Decoder. You're going to notice that in general, DVD support has been removed from the operating system. And when I say DVD support, I mean DVD video support. So the ability to author a DVD is no longer present. The ability to play back DVDs using any of the, well, either Windows 8 or Windows 8 Pro is not there. To be able to play back DVDs at all in Windows at this point, you need to install the feature pack that brings you Media Center. So you'll need to move up to Windows 8 Pro with Media Center, and at that point you'll be able to play back DVDs from within Media Center. But DVD playback from within Media Player is no longer possible, even if you install a third-party codec or install the media pack that brings you Media Center. That's not going to enable DVD playback in Windows Media Player. So while you can install Media Center, that's going to be the only Microsoft provided way to be able to play back a DVD. Now, you could still install third-party software to do that if you still have a need to play back DVDs, but I think fewer and fewer people these days are using Shiny Disk as their preferred method of consuming media. I think it's more about online or just files that they've downloaded, like through Zune or iTunes or something like that. Next is the standard VGA driver. The standard VGA driver was there to enable your video to work in the event that you did not have the IHV provided display driver available or installed for your display adapter. So you didn't have your video card drivers installed, so and there weren't any available in the box, so you would normally just use the standard VGA driver. This would also be what was used if you were to boot into either safe mode or boot into VGA mode. VGA mode is no longer present. There's a reduced resolution mode that is also available from the advanced startup menu. So the net experience is going to be roughly the same, but the standard VGA driver itself is gone. It's been replaced with this new Microsoft Basic Display Adapter driver that provides a much better experience overall, has support for higher resolutions, has support for the new method of drawing the desktop through the desktop window manager. So everything that would have been like an arrow effect before is still enabled through the basic display driver, but it's all being handled by the CPU, software rendering, and that sort of thing. So overall, the experience is going to be less good than what you would see if you were to install the native driver for your video card, but it's still workable in scenarios like, for example, you have an older PC that was running XP originally, and the only thing that it had was a display driver, a display adapter that had maybe a Windows that only had Windows XP drivers available. Well, because you'll see down below that we don't support Windows XP display drivers any longer. So that PC could continue to work by using the basic display adapter driver, which it would by default. And so I kind of jumped ahead there. The support for XPDM, or the Windows XP driver display model, that's been dropped for this release as well. So if you were using any type of Windows XP driver before to get your video working in Windows, and you're going to have to come up with a new solution for Windows 8. Either rely on the basic display adapter driver or upgrade your video card to something that has a more current driver. Even a Windows Vista driver will do, because it just has to be a WDDM or Windows Display Driver model driver. And WDDM 1.0 was Vista, 1.1 was Windows 7, and 1.2 is being introduced for Windows 8. But any of those versions of WDDM drivers are supported in Windows 8. So that may be what you need to do to get that older display adapter working in this new version. F8 during startup. We'll talk much more about this once we get to the startup module. But pressing the F8 key during startup no longer invokes the boot menu. We don't actually listen for the F8 key during startup any longer. There's a lot of different reasons for that. It wasn't a good customer experience, but it was also getting harder and harder to hit the F8 key window in the shrinking window that we were listening for it in. And more often than not had customers just banging away on a key on the keyboard during startup, to try to interrupt startup and it failing and then having to restart and try again and try again and try again. Overall, a bad experience. So we've made it now for this release to where the ways that you get into things like startup prepare or the advanced startup menu is much more predictable, and so there's always going to be a clearly defined way of getting there, and it's not going to rely on your ability to to hit a key at just the right time. So I think that should be an overall improvement. We've also removed support for this thing called previous versions. Previous versions wasn't widely used, but it basically just provided you the ability to see the state of a folder as it existed at a previous point in time. It integrated with this feature in Windows called Volume Shadow Copy that basically gave you the ability to take point-in-time snapshots of a file, even if it was already in use. Like if it was actively being used, we could still make a copy of that file through Volume Shadow services. So previous versions just was one of those files that, or was one of those features that tacked on to Volume Shadow services and enabled the end user feature to for the end user to be able to go back in time and see an earlier copy of a file or an earlier state of a folder or something like that. Now the replacement for that is this much simpler and much cooler feature called file history that we'll be talking about once we get to the recovery and troubleshooting module later on in the training. We're also seeing the removal of a few networking related features for this release. The first one is the network map, which gave users the ability to see a graphical representation of their home network or business network. It wasn't widely used and wasn't entirely accurate, so it's just part of the overall simplification of the networking experience that you're going to see in Windows 8. It was removed. We've also removed the ability to create ad hoc Wi-Fi networks from the main networking user interface. So because of the simplification of Network and Sharing Center and again the overall simplification of the networking experience in Windows 8, they've moved a lot of the less used experiences out of the main user's UI. It's still possible to create an ad hoc Wi-Fi network, but you need to use tools like NetSH or PowerShell to do that. Next is the Manage Wireless Networks interface. This was an interface that was used to add and delete and reorder saved wireless networks, but it was removed. The replacement for that is the new View Available Networks interface that comes up whenever you click on the network icon in the system tray or from the settings charm, which we'll talk more about later. In the area of virtualization, we've removed support for virtual PC, and because of that, we've lost support for Windows XP mode. Virtual PC provided the ability to create 32-bit VMs of Windows on the desktop of older Windows versions. Now, with Hyper-V, that is the server virtualization server that's been brought down to Windows 8, so you'll hear it referred to as Client Hyper-V. That is the new virtualization solution for the desktop version of Windows 8, and that is what replaces Hyper-V. Now, Windows XP mode was a feature. I wouldn't call it a feature. It was an application compatibility solution that we put out for customers that were migrating or upgrading to Windows 7, typically from Windows XP. We had a lot of small companies, small businesses that were using old LOB applications, line of business applications, that only functioned on Windows XP. So this was one of the things that was hindering them from being able to upgrade to Windows 7. So what we did with Windows XP mode is we provided anybody that has an appropriate version of Windows 7, so it was either Windows 7 Professional or Ultimate or Enterprise, provided them the ability to download Virtual PC and then download Windows XP mode, and that gave them a full installation of Windows XP that they could run for free on those specified SKUs, those specified editions of Windows. The Windows XP mode didn't end up seeing a lot of use, especially not in the area that it was intended for, so it's no longer supported in this release. The way that the licensing worked for Windows XP mode, if Virtual PC was installed on an appropriate edition of Windows 7, then it would enable this tag in the BIOS that's very similar to how OEMs will inject the product key into the BIOS so that it can do system lock pre-installation that would enable them to automatically activate PCs running Windows 7 or even Windows XP. This is the same method that we were using to activate Windows XP in this case. Hyper-V does not include that injected product key in the BIOS, so the licensing wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to run the XP mode VHD and have it be licensed properly. So the end result is that both Virtual PC and Windows XP are not supported in this release. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our overview module. The next module that we're going to be going into is setup.